DJ Metal Craig of Craig's Maelstrom here. I have one of the members of Melted Bodies with me today. Hey, how's it going? And would you like to introduce yourself and what position you do in the band?
Hello, hello. Thanks for having me. This is Andy. I am the vocalist for Melted Bodies. I was the vocalist and guitar player up until just a couple of months ago. So I would say I'm just a vocalist, which is a new thing for me to say.
Please go back in the history of Melted Bodies and how the band all got started.
Uh, we've been a band in some form or another for a little bit now. I'm trying to remember what year. A number of years ago, I was, sort of at an impasse of what I was going to do musically. I had come from playing in another band, which was very, very different than Melted Bodies, and was writing a bunch of different stuff. But some of those songs were Melted Bodies style songs, and I came across Scott, who is our drummer, at like some event in Los Angeles, and I was telling him about what I was working on and played him a bunch of demos, and then the ones that he gravitated towards were the Melted Body songs. So he jumped on board as drummer. Then I've been friends with Hoda, who's our bass player I was friends with her even before that, and she was always a guitar player in like punk bands and stuff, and she was like, oh, I just bought this Rickenbacker bass. I want to be a bass player in a band. And I was like, well, I just started jamming with this guitar player on this sort of weird alt metal thing. Would you want to try out for that? And so she came and nailed it. And so she was in, and then through work stuff, a bunch of like mutual coworkers and friends were like, you got to meet this guy, Ben. He's like an electronic artist, but he's a big metalhead, and I think you guys would get along. And so me and him connected, started becoming friends. And then he actually, way back when, booked us to play as Melted Bodies when we were just, a three-piece, and we brought in one friend to do some of the electronics on the early demos. And I think that might have been our first or second show ever. And then he booked us to play some electronic thing as sort of like an outlier. And then after that, we got close, and we were like, oh, we need somebody to do the keyboards and the electronics, and he joined from there. And then from there we were off and running. Started like actually becoming a real project, and started writing the songs that ended up on our first album.
And just so you know, before we get into some more questions, let you know that's your new album that I jammed just before the interview. Thanks to Austin from Secret Service PR. Reminds me a bit of System of a Down.
Yeah, and we get that. I love System of a Down, a great band. Definitely listen to them growing up. So always welcome those comparisons. We listen to so much other music than System of a Down, so I hope that those other influences come through. But I do understand the comparison as well.
How did you guys come up with the band name Melted Bodies?
I do graphic design as well, and I worked in fashion when I was younger, and so I actually was sort of doing like a graphic driven like t-shirt line that leaned very much into like sort of death metal imagery and heavy metal imagery, in general. And I called the clothing line Melted Bodies because I always wanted to call a band Melted Bodies, but I was a solo artist at that time. So I didn't want to call it Melted Bodies. So I called the clothing line Melted Bodies. And then, when it came to actually the songs, I was like, oh, I always wanted to call a project Melted Bodies, but I don't know if we should. And everybody in the band was like, no, that's the name. Like, the imagery fits, the music fits. So, if it was just me, the name of the band wouldn't have been Melted Bodies, but I'm really glad that everybody else in the band pushed for it and we kept it, because it turned out to be a great name and a great fit for us.
Personally, I think you have a pretty cool band name right there, Andy.
Yeah, thank you. I'm glad it stuck and that I wasn't convinced otherwise.
What are the band's immediate music career goals?
For the immediate is that we want to tour, and we actually did have some touring lined up, but some things fell through the tracks, and that actually ended up getting canceled. So for the fall season, we're just doing like a couple of local shows, and then hoping that we'll be out on the road a lot more early next year to help to play the new songs live, play some old stuff, and we've hardly toured it all outside of California, so we really feel like we deserve to be out there and expose ourselves to the rest of the world.
With the inevitable fork out as of October 18th, where can the album be ordered?
Right now, we just have the full album on Bandcamp, and that was for a number of reasons. But a big one is what you said, that we're trying to drive people to a place where hopefully they'll actually listen to the full album rather than on Spotify or Apple Music, where it's very much promoted to listen to singles and to skip through. And secondly, we're a totally we're a solo band, so we would love if people go to Bandcamp and actually purchase the album or get the vinyl, even purchase a few songs if they like it, because we have to support our costs for getting the vinyl made, and and just for trying to keep our heads above water.
Who designed the album art for the inevitable fork?
I do almost all the artwork for all our Melted Bodies stuff, and that album artwork, it was I ordered used dentures off of eBay and Etsy and collected them over a number of months. And then I took like a clear model box, poured some honey over the top of it, and then colored it. So that's the dripping underneath. And then the background is actually my tile flooring in my bathroom. And I saved my hair from combing my hair over a number of weeks, and then spread that all over the floor and took photos of it, and then dragged all that into Photoshop and adjusted the lighting and stuff. So that's how the history of that artwork came together. It's quite the adventure.
Just so you know, I thought the album artwork was absolutely cool and amazing from what I saw of it in the MP3's metadata. Like I thought
Awesome.
the
Yeah,
album,
thank you very much.
you're welcome, man. The album art is absolutely awesome. The next question is, what were the themes and concepts behind the song State of Mind? You want me to ask the question again? I don't think
Let
I got it there.
me think of State of Mind. So State of Mind was based off of, I think you said what was the meaning behind the song State of Mind, is that correct?
Yeah, themes and concepts behind the song State of Mind.
Yeah, so State of Mind, that was a sort of a practice that I was doing at the time, almost like a meditation and a journal practice of imagining myself in this sort of this it's very hard to explain because it's more conceptual, but sort of like a half dome place, surrounded by white hairs, and sort of a relaxing, put myself into like a certain state of mind, and then that combined with a real life relationship that I was going through that dealt with a person that had a sort of splitting personality. And so if you look up the definition of splitting, it's sort of like you look at things in black or white. It's either like extremely bad or extremely good. And so that was something that really, putting myself in a state of mind where it wasn't, life is not about that. It's about living in the gray. It's never all bad or all good. And so it was a really good time for me to sort of, write that song from the context of both dealing with, a personality that was splitting, and then also dealing with my own personal thoughts of not only how I would deal with that relationship, but also how I was personally going to handle it in my mental state. If that makes sense at all. I know that was a bit of a mouthful.
And I apologize for coughing a little bit here and there. I have bad anxiety.
Yeah, of course.
Okay. Just wanted to clarify what was going on there. What are the foreseeable plans for Melted Bodies? Are there any plans like new tours, new material, or a possible split with another band?
Right now, just getting started on new material. I really wanted to release this album before diving into new stuff. So that's very much just in the early stages. As I said, trying to get on some tours early next year. Nothing set in stone, but would love to really tour behind this material. And yeah, that's really it for now. Yeah, no splits with other bands on the books right now. We'll see what comes up, but mainly just yeah, playing live.
This next one might get you laughing a little bit, but it's a good question I sometimes ask the bands. Does the band have any band gear endorsements?
We do not have any endorsements. No.
What is the latest album you've been jamming on in your music or something that's new to you?
Whoa. I mean, I listen to so much music, so I'm trying to think. Like in the world of heavy metal, I was listening to the new Kuba Khan Texas. They're fun. Like straight. I'm sure you're aware of them, but really heavy. The new Chat Pile. The new Farsi is pretty cool. I'm trying to think of then outside of heavy metal. Sade Benair, which is old sort of solo piano stuff. She's beautiful. I've listened to that off and on. Or sorry, I'm more like Middle Eastern. I'm confusing the two. Um, what else? Colin Stetson, he's like really good composer. He had an album that came out this year, which I've really been enjoying. Jessica Pratt, her album from earlier this year is really lovely. What else? Nia Archives, it's sort of that like alt pop. She mixes in, a lot of her stuff is based off jungle and drum and bass. Yeah,
I know
I
one
think
that
that's
you
good for
might
now.
have missed that you might be interested in, or not sure if you heard. The new Dark Tranquility.
Oh yeah, yeah, I have that on my list now.
That's a killer album, man.
Cool.
Yeah.
I'll look it up.
Who are the band's musical influences?
I mean, it's all over the place, which I think comes through in our music, which is purposeful. But I think the roots of the band, the roots of the band was really trying to do a sort of like post punk, post punk sort of Devo, Talking Heads, ecstasy, meets 90s thrash metal and death metal or industrial metal, and then mixing in like a lot of electronic music that we like as well. And then I'm also like a big fan of like Nick Cave and the Cramps and that kind of stuff, and so having that sort of darker undertones and sort of spoken voice things in there. So I think those are probably like the main influences. But it really is a song by song. I really love being able to try to challenge a listener and challenge myself to create something that truly feels unique, which I know is challenging to listen to at times, but I like to think that a lot of us out there listen to a bunch of styles of music and are craving something that we're doing now, even if it is a bit even if it takes a little bit to sink in.
We got four more for the interview, and then I'll need a couple of station IDs from you.
Sure.
Who's all in the current band lineup, and what instruments do they play?
Did you say who's all in the band lineup?
Yes, who's all in the current band lineup, and what instruments do they play?
Yeah, so as I said at the beginning, Andy, I do lead vocals. Ben does all the synthesizers and electronics. Scott is our drummer, and then Hoda, who plays bass. And then for guitar, we still don't have like a permanent member. We've been playing with a guy, Michael. He's played with us the most, and he's amazing. But he also plays in another band, Squid Pisser. So when he's not touring with them, he plays with us. And then we have a couple of other guitar players that have just come in and out as we, sort of solidify that role.
What advice do you have for people who want to form their own bands?
My Chihuahua. I would say find people that you genuinely get along with, even if they're not the best musicians, because you can always practice and become a better musician, but you can't. It's much harder to make great music with people that you don't get along with versus the other way around.
What social media outlets can the band be reached on? Did I ask you that one already?
You haven't, but we're most active on Instagram and then and on our email. And I think our the general email right now is just meltedbodies@meltedbodies.com.
What new news do you have on the Melted Bodies front? As in anything we might have missed in this interview?
I think we covered it. Yeah, the full just main thing is the album just came out. It's only the full album, the way that we want it presented to listeners is only on Bandcamp right now. So I really recommend if you are in for an adventure and in for an experience is to listen to the full album from beginning to end on Bandcamp. Otherwise, we still have them separated out into 3 EPs that are on Spotify and all the other streaming services.
Cool. And before we get into the station IDs, I thank Austin from Secret Services PR for setting us up with this interview today. The first interview station ID for the interview is, hey, this is Andy of Melted Bodies, and you're listening to Mangled Music Radio.
Hi, this is Andy from Melted Bodies, and you're listening to Mangled Music Radio.
And the second one's for Craig's Metal Storm for my personal show, which is named after the video game Metal Storm for the Nintendo Entertainment System.
You have to say that one again.
It'll be, hey, this is Andy of Melted Bodies, and you're listening to Craig's Metal Storm.
Oh, just say it again. Craig's Metal Storm. Okay. Hi, this is Andy from Melted Bodies, and you're listening to Craig's Metal Storm.
Cool. Thank you very much for the time today, and thank you very much for the interview, Andy.
Yeah, of course. Thanks for taking the time to check us out and for putting together the questions.
You're welcome. You have yourself a wonderful rest of the day.
You too.
Take care.